The bottle of Pinot Grigio was empty, and so was I. Another dinner party, another flawless performance. Or so I thought. Ben refilled my glass, eyebrows raised. That smirk. God, I could smack it right off his stupid face. Easy on the wine, Sarah. Don't want your aim to be off tomorrow. He always had to have the last word. Oh, like I'm worried about darts? My friends giggled. Ever since Ben got obsessed with those dumb tournaments, the jokes were endless. I should be used to it, but the thing is, they had a point. Ben was so predictable these days. It wasn't just the darts. Someone, was it Rachel's husband? Chimed in with something about how darts weren't a real sport. That's when I snapped. God knows why, but I did. At least it's a hobby. Unlike whatever Mark calls the crap he does with spreadsheets, I blurted out. Silence fell. Even worse than the smug look on Ben's face was the flicker of pity in Rachel's eyes. Later, after the dishes were done and the goodbyes said, I finally threw the mask off. You want me to call him weak? Fine. You are. You've gone soft, Ben, and it's pathetic. I was yelling now, months of frustration spilling out in a messy, wine-fueled rant. He didn't even raise his voice. Why would you think I'd care, Sarah? Go to Mark tomorrow. Do whatever you want. There it was. The infuriating calm of his, the maddening control. Don't act like you're the good guy here. Unless. I couldn't finish the thought. It was too cruel, too ridiculous. He couldn't be that twisted, could he? But that flat, dead look in his eyes. Don't bother, he said, already halfway up the stairs. It's already done. What the actual hell? Done? What was done? Did he just give me a free pass to cheat? Was he setting me up? A million panicked questions whirled in my head as I collapsed on the sofa, the empty bottle my only company. Morning brought no answers, just a dull headache and a sense of dread coiling in my gut. My usual cool facade felt brittle. Mark was suddenly the last person on earth I wanted to see. But Ben, who'd always been so easy to read. He was a damn puzzle box, and I had no idea how to crack it open. The office felt like a fashion runway. Never mind that I work in insurance, not Vogue. Today, with my power blazer and the heels that make my legs look endless, I was ready to conquer the world. Or at least Mark, the unbearably hot numbers guy who actually made spreadsheets seem interesting. He did a textbook double take when I walked past his cubicle. Score. That afternoon was. Well, let's just say Mark lived up to the Excel hype. I know. It was reckless, stupid even. But for the first time in ages, I felt that rush, dangerous, alive, wanted. It wasn't about revenge on Ben, not entirely, at least, it was about reclaiming my own damn life. That feeling lasted all of, 3 days. Then the paranoia kicked in. Whispers seemed louder. Did anyone see Mark slip me a note? Could my coworkers just sense the shift in me? Every ping of my phone could be Ben finding out, the perfect storm about to ruin whatever was left of my life. Ben. He added to the confusion. If he knew something was up, and with that poker face, how could I tell? He certainly wasn't acting like a scorned husband. One night, he made steak, my favorite, and didn't drop a single snarky comment. Was he playing some long game? Waiting for me to unravel? The worst part was that even with everything feeling off-kilter, I still craved that heat with Mark. But now it was tainted with this sick fascination with Ben. What was his plan? Sleep became impossible. Every night I'd creep downstairs, the house creaking around me like an accomplice. I dug through his desk, risked a peek at his phone. Nothing. Then, on laundry day, bingo. A receipt crumpled in his jeans pocket. Some seedy motel on the outskirts of town. Not our kind of place by a long shot. My first instinct was to confront him, throw everything in his face. But what if I was wrong, and I just reveal my own dirty secret? Yet staying silent. The idea of him having another life I knew nothing about was eating me alive. So, I did what any self-respecting woman on the verge of losing it completely would. I started my own investigation. Browser history late at night, social media searches with fake accounts. I was becoming a regular Sherlock Holmes, except pathetic and terrified of getting caught. Mark was becoming an afterthought. A distraction when what my mind craved was the puzzle of Ben. Where did he sneak off to with that damn duffel bag of his? Were the new shirts, the subtle whiff of cologne meant for another woman? The questions swirled, sharper and more obsessive with each passing day. My world shrank. My job felt like an elaborate cover as I became Sarah the spy. I mapped out Ben's routine, memorized his train schedule, the coffee shop where he grabbed a muffin most mornings. Pathetic doesn't even begin to describe it. But I couldn't stop. Then, my sister of all people, the queen of small-town gossip, turned into an unexpected lifeline. Her bubbly phone call was supposed to be about some neighborhood drama, but as she rambled, my ears perked up. You know, I saw Ben heading downtown the other day, that area near the old factories. The seed was planted. I needed someone to talk to, but my usual crowd was out of the question. Who knew when loyalties might shift? Then it hit me. Janice. Quiet, always in the background, Janice from accounting. Turns out, underneath that mousy exterior is a Nancy Drew fan with an iron will. Over hurried lunches, I found my outlet, someone to theorize with about Ben's suspicious activities. The plan came together in a rush of adrenaline. Janice would take a sick day to cover my tracks, and I was going to play follow the leader. Ben disappeared down a dingy side street, into a building that screamed shady business. I swore if some bombshell blonde walked out, I might actually lose it. Instead, the sign on the door read, Hawthorne Investigations, discreet and confidential. Wait, what? My legs went numb. Not a love nest, but a damn detective agency? Was I the one being investigated? I felt sick, exposed. But under the nausea, a flicker of anger ignited. How dare he play me like this? Fine. Two could play at this game. The lawyer's office felt almost sterile after the grimy street, but the woman behind the desk, all crisp suit and steely gaze, was exactly what I needed. No talk of divorce, just a cold, hard assessment of assets, loopholes, ways to protect myself. I left her office feeling strangely empowered. It was war, and this time, Ben wouldn't see me coming. The report sat untouched on my desk. My boss had made a comment about me, not being myself, that I was missing deadlines like I didn't already know that. Problem was, I couldn't stop checking my phone, waiting for a text from Janice, an update on whatever rabbit hole she was digging into about Ben. I was unraveling, and it was starting to show. Mark, sensing my distraction, turned up the charm. But what had felt exciting now just sent shivers down my spine. His touch, the way he said my name, it made me want to crawl out of my skin. The whole thing was tainted, not by Ben, but by this dread that his game was bigger than I ever imagined. My lifeline started to fray too. My friends, once sources of laughter and distraction, were now targets. Did they know anything? Did they pity me? It was in their eyes, those sidelong glances when Ben's name came up. The whispers were getting louder too, the ones that had nothing to do with me and Mark. Ben was supposedly seen with some woman, someone not me. A pang of jealousy, surprising and bitter, shot through me. But how could I confront him when my own guilt was a constant weight? Mark's office was my temporary, pathetic escape. But the way he looked at me across the desk wasn't comforting anymore, it was calculating. You need to clear your head, Sarah, he said, reaching for my hand. I have just the place. That's when I snapped. You really think a weekend getaway will fix this mess? I jerked back my hand. I know you think I'm vulnerable. Easy. Newsflash, I'm not playing along anymore. His face hardened, the charm mask slipping. Home offered no peace. Silence hung heavy in the air. Ben's absence was its own accusation. The meticulously tidy kitchen, the emptiness of the closet where his stupid duffel bag used to be, they mocked me. I couldn't take it anymore. Desperation, the kind I'd only seen in trashy reality shows, took over. His drawers, his briefcase, his laptop, off limits until now. I found the file an hour later, tucked in the back of his desk. Not love letters, not clues about a mistress, but photos of me. Me leaving Mark's apartment, me laughing with him. Everything meticulously dated and labeled. The sound of the front door cut through my daze. There he stood, the look on his face a twisted kind of satisfaction. Ready to talk now, Sarah? A scream lodged in my throat. Not at him, but at myself. Was I such a fool that I hadn't seen this coming? I sank to the floor, proof of my own stupidity scattered around me. But even in that sickening moment, some flicker of defiance refused to be stamped out. So what? My voice sounded weak, pathetic even to my own ears. You played detective, big deal. Is that supposed to make everything okay? Make you the good guy? His answer was to push another photo across the table. Me and my sister at lunch, caught mid-conversation. Janice, my supposed ally, was on his payroll all along? I felt physically ill. Don't make this about me, Sarah. This isn't about anger or revenge, at least not in the way you think. His infuriating calm voice cut through the roaring in my ears. Then why? Saying it out loud made it all seem even more insane. Why would he go to such lengths just to prove I was horrible? We both knew that already. The doorbell rang, the shrill sound shattering my thoughts. Ben answered, and a woman's voice drifted into the room. A stranger's voice, unless. My head whipped up. Rachel, what in the holy hell was she doing here? She looked almost apologetic until she met my eyes. Then, a cold smirk I recognized all too well. Mark was getting clingy, so I figured I'd cash in while I could. Her words barely registered until Ben, the emotionless bastard, actually smiled. Rachel here played her part beautifully. It was surprisingly easy to find someone eager to exploit a bored, unhappy wife. The words landed like punches. Everything slotted into place. The accidental meetings, the hotel, all a sickening play staged just for me. That's when he laid out his plan, coldly logical, more about financial leverage than broken hearts. My indiscretions were the perfect blackmail. I tuned out the legal jargon, the threats barely veiled. It was the last thing he said that finally broke through the numbness. Don't pretend this came out of nowhere, Sarah. You ignored me, belittled me, made me feel invisible. This is about being seen again, on my terms. He wasn't yelling, but there was a raw intensity that made me flinch. There was no escape, no argument, no clever retort to salvage this wreck. I was the loser in a game I didn't even know I'd been playing. He left, and Rachel, after a final twist of the knife about my gullibility, followed. I was alone, my world reduced to those damning photographs and the echo of my own humiliation. I didn't recognize myself in the bathroom mirror. Bloodshot eyes, yesterday's makeup smeared. This was the face of someone broken. A noise from downstairs, a reminder that I wasn't the only one awake in the house of betrayals. I couldn't face Ben now, couldn't even stomach the sight of him. The front door creaked open. I didn't move, didn't want to see him, to hear whatever fresh torture he'd planned. But the voice that floated up wasn't his. Sarah, are you okay? Janice. I sagged with relief. Or was it more complicated? Was this yet another piece of his elaborate plan? She didn't offer excuses or pity, just a cup of tea and a quiet presence on the sofa. Once, I would have laughed at the idea of finding comfort in my mousy accountant. But this was the lifeline I needed. When I told her everything, I expected judgment. What I got was a surprising kind of understanding. He won this round, Sarah, she said. But he doesn't get to win everything. It wasn't optimism, it was pure grit. And, crazy as it seemed, it was contagious. The town, or so it felt, closed ranks against me. Whispers in the grocery store, averted gazes. It was worse than the humiliation of the affair. This was the loss of any pretense of belonging. Ben, of course, remained oddly untouched by it all, the ever-devoted husband, a pillar of the community. When the lawyer called, the one I'd seen as my protector, the news was bleak. Every loophole closed off, every attempt to gain leverage over Ben utterly crushed. A new level of low hit when even she hinted at a settlement to make it go away. Mark saw his chance too. No more Mr. Nice Guy routine. A little thank you for old times' sake wouldn't go amiss, he said, leer replacing the concerned colleague act. That's when something in me shifted. Not hope, but the opposite. A pure, blinding rage. Screw this town. Screw the job. Screw them all. They could have the pathetic version of Sarah, the one who begged and bargained. This new Sarah, fueled by nothing but anger? She would make them pay. The visit to Ben wasn't about pleading. The spark in my eyes must have startled him. No tears, just a cold, clear question. You really think this will give you anything resembling a decent life? He didn't answer, maybe because for the first time, he couldn't predict my next move. Walking out of that house, past the meticulously trimmed lawn and the tidy, empty rooms, felt different. It wasn't defeat. It might not be victory yet, but it was the start of something. What that something was, even I wasn't sure. But there's a certain power in having nothing left to lose. The coffee shop was generic enough to blend in. Chain stores, predictable menus, A welcome anonymity in this city I still didn't quite call my own. 5 years, a lifetime ago. Sometimes my hand still twitched for an old phone, my pulse quickened at the sight of a vaguely familiar car. But the Sarah who lived here, Sarah Smith, no-nonsense haircut, sensible shoes, she wouldn't crumble at those ghosts. Ms. Smith, your order's ready. The barista's smile was impersonal, a relief compared to the pitying glances back home. Yet, even here, the past had a way of sneaking up. The woman who rushed past my table, a flash of recognition, quickly masked. An ex-coworker? A client from my old life? Shame and defiance battled inside me, the familiar cocktail of emotions that was my constant companion now. The work wasn't glamorous. Caseworker at a women's shelter. Some days were heartbreakingly grim, others sparked a fierce pride. These women, their stories. They were reminders that I wasn't the only one who'd fallen hard, the only one scrambling back to her feet. News of Ben reached me like a faded postcard. His business failing, a messy divorce, no surprise there, something vague about a legal mess. I allowed myself a grim smile. Had he finally overplayed his hand? Was there some twisted satisfaction in seeing the architect of my downfall stumble? Or maybe that was proof I hadn't healed as much as I pretended. The encounter with Rachel was the true shock. A farmer's market of all places. She looked older, tired. No triumphant smirk, just a flicker of awkward recognition. A mumbled, sorry about everything, before she hurried away. Was that genuine remorse, or simply regret for a gig gone wrong? Then, him, Mark, turning up with that same practiced charm. The offer was thinly veiled, his expanding business, a consultant position, a comfortable life. He'd assumed my desperation made me his old Mark, easily manipulated. He misread the coldness in my eyes. You haven't changed, Mark. Still preying on people when they're down. Seeing his confusion turn to anger, it was a twisted kind of victory. The walk home was longer than usual. My apartment was small, sparse, but it was mine. No echoes of Ben's footsteps, no carefully curated surfaces hiding an empty heart. Sunlight slanted through the window, and I found myself staring, not at the cityscape, but inward. What was this life I'd cobbled together? Was there room for anything resembling happiness? Maybe not the easy kind, but something built on hard-won truths, the strength found in broken places. I didn't have the answers, just the stubborn belief that rock bottom might just have been the only place where I could truly start to